Welcome to Paranormal Files Into the Darkness. I am your host, Sean Wagner. Tonight, Mike and I will be talking with author historian Sam Baltrusis, and we'll be checking out some of his stories after this. The paranormal world is one of moving shadows. Strange figures hidden just out of sight. Supernatural phenomena usually offers more questions than answers. Spirits, demons, and the undead. Join us as we journey into the darkness with researchers, investigators, psychics, or mediums, each one getting us one step closer to the truth. I'm Sean Wagner, and these are the Paranormal Files. All right. Hey, how you doing, Mike Purcell?
Oh, Sean, I'm doing well. It's back at it again tonight with a great guest. Can't wait to bring Sam out.
Yes, he will be a great guest. Also, I want to congratulate you and Gwen.
Yes.
It's 4 years anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. 4 years. Seems like
why 4 years?
It's a lifetime. Or two.
I can only imagine from my own past.
Yep. No, it's good. It's good. I can't complain.
That's good. That's what matters. And you have a special announcement to make as well, as far as your family, correct?
Oh yeah, our bloodhounds are 2 years old today.
All right,
Tucker, those canine search and rescue mutts, meatheads, whatever you like to call them. We really put them to the test this past weekend. We were out for almost 20 hours, 12 hours on Saturday and 8 hours on Sunday.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
And like you said, they do search and rescue. That's great.
Yeah, we're looking to get them certified in the next month or so. So it'll be good.
That is good. Well, also this show, as I always say, is a super chat. So please give us a like and share on Facebook or a thumbs up, subscribe. Also hit the bell so you can be notified of future broadcasts on YouTube and share as well. Thank you. All right. Also, if you have any questions along the way, please put them in all capital letters. Now for the real introduction, as I always say for tonight, he's the author of Ghosts of Salem and featured in the Curse of Lizzie Borden. He's penned more than a dozen paranormal-themed books, including Mass Murders and Ghosts of the American Revolution. He's been featured on several national TV shows, including Travel Channel's A Haunting, Most Terrifying Places, Haunted Towns, and Haunted USA. He recently made a cameo in the documentaries The House in Between 2 and on several television programs, including Paranormal Night Shift, Most Terrifying with Jason Hawes, and Forbidden History. He also appeared in Fright Club 1 and 2 with the Ghost Brothers and Jack Osborne on Discovery Plus. Baltrusis is a sought-after lecturer who speaks at libraries and paranormal-related events across the country. In the past, he's worked for VH1, MTV.com, Newsweek, and ABC Radio, as well as a regional stringer for the New York Times. That must mean he does some camera work somewhere, or at least has done. His books can be found on Amazon. Visit his website, sambaltrusis.com, for more information. He will appear on the upcoming series History's Most Haunted, airing on T&E in Canada. Sorry, I'm not sure what T&E stands for. We'll have to ask Sam when he comes on. And on Haunt TV. He can be reached on Twitter, the @ Sam Baltrusis. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest is Sam Baltrusis. How are you doing? How are things in Massachusetts? Or no, you're in
Hey guys. Well, today it's been a beautiful day. So it's been actually. So I was telling you earlier, I work the overnight shifts,
Sure.
so I generally sleep during the daytime. But because today was so beautiful, I kind of woke up a little early and kind of went out to enjoy the beautiful, just the sun coming down. It was just a nice day.
Oh yeah. We have an early comment here. Being that who it is, we'll put it on right away. Gwen says, thank you. You're welcome, Gwen. Congratulations on making it 4 years, by the way.
Congratulations.
Oh, for her, it's a cakewalk. She'll do 40 in no time. Me, on the other hand, I'm doing hard time. Like 10 years for me. No, I'm kidding.
All right. Well, it's time to have a little toast. Whatever you have, alcohol or not. Have a little toast. We're at Thursday on the weekend, close to Friday. And
I have my remainder of my coffee.
Hey, that whatever.
You gotta have that.
Absolutely. We're close to the weekend, and everyone here works during the week, so
Cheers.
Oh,
Cheers for a
cheers.
good show.
all right. We want to also congratulate Sam. Who's been this is the 14th anniversary of his sobriety today.
Yeah, so a big part of my story is getting sober, and I think that a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight would have not happened if I didn't get sober back on June 1st, 2009. And the reason why I share that to people in general is because it's experience, strength, and hope. I know a lot of people within the paranormal community, also during people in psychic mediums, use alcohol and drugs to kind of like drink the ghost away, if you will. And you can't drink the ghost away. So yeah, this is my 14-year anniversary. It's been an amazing journey of self-discovery, and I'm really grateful.
Congratulations.
Yes, very much so. Congratulations. One question I always ask people is, what did your parents think about the paranormal when you were growing up?
Well, it's kind of complicated because I grew up, so my dad and my mother divorced when I was really young. So my grandfather passed when I was around 6, and my mother moved back to Florida. So we were in Chicago. My dad was in the Navy. So I was very sensitive as a child. So my mother really was protecting me from my father back in the 70s when I was growing up, because I was just so sensitive. I would get, I would as emotional as a child, just like I would cry if I'm over a lot of things. So my mother sensed the sensitivity in me, and really after they divorced, we moved to Florida, and then I started connecting with my grandfather pretty early on. So I remember when we moved back to Florida after fleeing my father in Chicago, who was a violent alcoholic, we basically went to my grandfather's house, who passed away. I was sleeping in his room, and I didn't know it was his room. And I remember waking up and seeing him on the corner of my bed and describing him to my mother. And she's like, "That's your grandfather." And my mother, she had experiences as well with him after he passed, but she was so terrified. And at that time, I didn't really realize that was different or weird. But as I progressed, things would, after my kind of connecting with my grandfather, and I actually got what I would call a download of information from him. It was scary for me. So I did have experiences after. There was one experience with my sister and I, there was what looked like red glowing eyes coming through the window when I was around like 8 or 9 years old. And after that, I was just so terrified of having any abilities or connecting with the spirit realm. I shut it down for most of my life, and actually writing a book called Fueled by Fear, which is about me facing my fears. And I was a pretty fear. My life was based in fear, and I had a lot of fears to work through. Fear of flying, fear of the dark, fear of clowns. I had all sorts of fears. And of course, I go into the paranormal field, which is like surrounded by all sorts of dark things. But I'm like, yeah, let's face my fears and work in the paranormal field. But really the paranormal, like I was a journalist, as you alluded to in the intro, for many years. And I was really worried about kind of going on the record with my abilities as a journalist. I remember writing an article for a local magazine about haunted hotspots in Boston. And they were like, "Do you actually believe in this stuff?" And I'm like, "I really do. I really do believe in this." But I was worried that I was going to lose my credibility as a journalist if I went on the record believing in ghosts. And this is before pop culture and sort of the shift toward acceptance toward the paranormal field. But yeah, it's definitely my life has definitely changed since first writing my book, Ghost of Boston, about 12 years ago.
That makes sense, because one of the groups I was part of, we actually had a realtor on our team. And I think that's the reason why she left. She was afraid for people to find out that she had an interest in the paranormal and was investigating it. I can easily see that.
Yeah, it's weird. Like if you read my first couple of books, like Ghost of Boston, I use the word alleged a lot, like the allegedly haunted location, and everybody knows it's like teeming with ghosts. And I was just so afraid to not be a skeptic. And I even said, like, I'm kind of a skeptic believer when I first wrote my first few books. But as I progressed in the field and started going to all these haunted locations and having experiences along the way, that's when things, there's no denying in my mind that there are spirits and that there are other things that are out there that it's my job to give them a voice.
That makes sense. That's certainly a good idea as well. I guess actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you've had some awards through television and your work on the Curse of Lizzie Borden, as well as a haunting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this past a couple of days ago, we were nominated for several. They're called Telly Awards, and it's kind of like it's sort of like a version, kind of like similar to like the Emmys for the television field. And I didn't even realize that Curse of Lizzie Borden was up for a nomination, but Curse of Lizzie Borden came out on Discovery Plus about 2 years, so 2022 it came out, but it aired on the Travel Channel in 2023. So it was up for nomination. So out of all the shock docs on the Travel Channel, it actually won the highest award, which is a gold Telly Award. And to me, like that's validation, because I'll tell you that show and filming that show with Dave Schrader and Chris Fleming changed my life. It was filmed during COVID, so it was a very intense filming situation that I don't know if we could ever technically replicate again. So the fact that it was honored, and it was also filmed during COVID with all the regulations, to me, it was a huge honor. I also worked as an associate producer on the 11th season of A Haunting. And that show, I actually was on season 10, and then they asked me to be an associate producer for season 11. And we won the People's Telly Award for the entire season. And also we won a silver Telly Award for Asylum 49, so a specific episode. So we technically won 3 Telly Awards. Yay.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. So did you ever you were always behind the camera producing then and such, correct? So did you have complete control of what was filmed and everything then?
Not necessarily complete control. I mean, for me, so as a haunting, with a haunting, so haunting as a producer, you search out the story. So I'm an associate producer, and I work with a team of producers and creative people. So my job was to get the stories and to find stories that fit an hour-long format. And so we work together at telling the stories and making sure it actually fits within a haunting. I don't know if you've seen it's been around for almost 20 years, a haunting. And this is actually the final season, was season 11. And so yes, I worked behind the camera, but it was more working with people that had extreme hauntings in their lives, and almost kind of like a counselor, because I also had an extreme haunting. So the fact that I was on season 10, I knew what the process was when it came to telling your story to a lot of people. And it's almost like coming out of the closet with your paranormal experiences. And you're doing this to help other people, but also it's a catharsis to be able to tell your story to the public. And kind of like you're as sick as your secrets. And to me, a haunting is about kind of like exercising those, facing those fears and talking about them and kind of using it as therapy. So it was more about me counseling the people that had the extreme hauntings and making sure that the story was told and told correctly.
Our co-host who's out on leave, well, she personal issues, not able to be here with us. She and a group I was familiar with were actually on this episode "Evil Rises" from season 5 as well. And the one thing that you have in common there also is, I know it's probably a little bit jumping the gun, but you had an occurrence where you had like a tree or vines or something like that in a personal experience.
A tree or vines? What?
Or, well, there was like vines or something.
So I'm not really sure where you're. So the show that I was on was called Provoking Evil, and it was on a haunting.
Okay.
And so Provoking Evil was the 100th episode of a haunting. That is my whole story. Is where I was telling a story in Salem, and this is before I knew I was clairvoyant, and I basically started telling the story of Richard Crowninshield, and he killed Captain Joseph White in 1830 in Salem. So it's kind of a notorious case that we talked about for many years. I somehow started channeling Richard Crowninshield and didn't realize I had that ability to channel. And then he took me over, and I basically had an attachment for 8 horrific days. And so the episode called Provoking Evil, and really it should have been called Accidentally Provoking Evil, because I really didn't mean to actually provoke evil or even to channel Richard Crowninshield. But I had my good friend Joni Meehan, she reached out to me and said, Sam, you have an attachment. She reached out to Michael Robichaud, who's a shaman, who did a removal on me. And that's something, so having that experience really opened me up to darker energies. And so I basically, after having that attachment and being featured on that episode, I was able to tell my story to a lot of other people who had similar stories, and that led to me being an associate producer on season 11 of A Haunting.
That's very cool. Do you still work with them at A Haunting?
So, as I was kind of alluding to, it was the last season. So season 11, the Nicholas, who was the founder of A Haunting and the owner of it's called New Dominion Pictures, actually passed away. So right after season 11 aired, so it looks like that we're not going to be renewed after. So I worked on the last season, and knock on wood if it gets picked up again, because it's been around for such a long time. But Nicholas was an amazing man. He passed away right after during season 11 while it was airing on the Travel Channel. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be picked up again, but just grateful to be able to have worked on the show, and also grateful to have been on the show as an experiencer.
That's awesome. What was it? Can you tell us what it was like to work with Dave Schrader and I think you had Chris Fleming on there as well, correct?
Yeah. So Curse of Lizzie Borden Chris was on the show. It was a documentary that focused on my family ties to the Borden family, and that's something that I didn't know for most of my life. I wrote a book about the experience called Related to Evil, and really I have investigated the Lizzie Borden murder house for many, many years, and really didn't have the experiences that we had while filming. And I think it was the combination of working with Dave Schrader and with Chris Fleming together, like somehow like the energy of having these people together kind of created this experience that was amazing. It was an amazing experience, but it was also mortifying. I remember going into filming the show a week later, didn't really realize who I was going to be working with, except that it was going to be on Lizzie Borden. And I remember a woman who claimed to be a psychic reached out to me, and she said, "You're about to film a TV show, and you're going to be in a horrific car accident, and you're going to die heading on I-93 in a black SUV." And I'm like, "Okay, thanks for that heads up," Wow. And it turns out the week later I was filming, and I decided to take an Uber to set instead of actually going in a car. And so I'm like, I'm going to take an Uber. And so I pull up to the murder house, and guess what Dave Schrader's driving? It's a black SUV. And I'm like, oh, great. So we're about to, this is not going to end well. So that was my beginnings of Curse of Lizzie Borden. I feel like that because Dave Schrader, had so much respect for him as a fellow paranormal investigator, and I really didn't know Chris Fleming too well, but I did respect him as a psychic medium in the field. He worked with a lot of psychic kids, and he's also been on Ghost Adventures. So he had a pretty prolific history. And I just remember sitting down with these two great paranormal investigators, and also Luann Jolly, who's a local, she's a great, she does EVP work, and she does really great EVPs. Us together was just an amazing team. I came on as a historian, and I actually started channeling with Dave Schrader, and I think I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have Dave Schrader to my side, basically guiding me. And also Chris Fleming was with me as well, and he was like, yeah, I was being used as a vessel, and I had to just go with the flow. So I think that the show turned out so well, and is so well respected within the paranormal community because it let the spirits sort of guide the narrative, and we didn't force the narrative to happen.
Yeah, that would be. Sounds like it was a really good experience. That's for sure.
Well, if you watch the show, it wasn't really a good experience. It was a mortifying experience because it was like it was a horrific.
I meant working with the guys. I can see.
Yeah.
I can see your experience being bad. Sorry about that. I didn't.
Well, I have to ask: was there an accident at all with a black SUV?
Well, okay, that's a good question. So actually, there almost was. So I'm kind of glad that the psychic medium did reach out to me because my producer Kay Rothman was driving back. I went to the hotel the first night and didn't stay at the murder house because it was just too intense after channeling, and we almost got hit by a semi that was right behind us. So yeah, we almost did have a car accident. I do feel like by having that kind of in my back of my mind. I'm like, listen, Kay, like we have to be really careful because someone told me that I was going to be in a horrific car accident, and she's like, okay, I'm going to drive you to the hotel. But yeah, so we almost were hit, and we did. So Dave Schrader did drive. We were driving out to film in the woods in the Freetown State Forest, and that is where John Morse, his home was close to where we were filming, and that experience compared to even in the murder house in Fall River was terrifying because there was a lot of cryptid activity out there. In addition, it was also freezing. It was in February, and it was like snow everywhere, ice everywhere. We were literally getting hypothermic out in the middle of the woods filming the show. So, and if you watch Curse of Lizzie Borden, we have a seance at the end, and it was a beautiful experience, but it was also horrible too. I mean, seeing Dave Schrader being taken over while he was trying to automatic write. And if you watch the documentary, Dave Schrader is shaking because he's trying to fight the entity taking him over.
Oh wow!
That's
intense. Yeah. And I don't know how I would react if somebody said, "Hey, don't you're going to be in a car accident." I'd be like, I'd be walking.
I'm like, how do I handle this? Like, how do I head to set? And because I felt strongly I was being like something was trying to keep me from going because they didn't want me to find it out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I felt like that there was another force. I would just say that there was something else playing that was trying to keep me from going. Maybe my spirit guides or something. Because what unfolded during the filming changed my life. I mean, it was all real. People were like, like all this. I'm like, yeah, that all did happen. There was a lot of built up emotion from the spirit realm. This is right during COVID. So the place that has been investigated pretty much every day for many, many years was locked up. So the spirits were desperate to communicate. The spirit that I ended up channeling, Eliza Borden, she murdered her 2 children. And she, about 40 years before the heinous crime in 1892. Eliza Borden, and if you watch the show, I mean, she took me over, and I was in complete tears, and it was, I barely remember what happened, except for that I knew that she was so emotionally distraught over her children, and she was like, keep them, keep them away from them, keep them away from them. And I didn't really realize how emotional it was until after seeing the what was filmed, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so. I mean, it was so emotional. And all I remember is coming out of a trance, and Dave Schrader was kind of guiding me through this trance, and it's kind of like similar to what's called the Holzer method, where Hans Holzer would lead a trans medium into a deep trance where you would actually have pretty profound, deep spirit communication.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting.
All right. All right. A reminder, our guest is author historian Sam Baltrusis. Please put any questions you might have in capital letters to help us see them better. Thank you. If you like the broadcast, you're helping us out by liking and sharing. Thank everyone for tuning in and watching on Facebook, or by giving a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel and sharing on YouTube. I guess now would be a good time, if you don't mind, Sam, to talk about the book, Ghosts of Concord's from the Colonial Inn and Haunted America, or something to that effect.
Yeah, so you kind of cut out for a little bit, Sean.
Oh,
but I wrote a book called Ghost of Conquer's Colonial Inn. When I write a book, and I've written 15 altogether, so Ghost of Conquer's Colonial Inn is going to be number 16, and another book that I'm working on currently called Fueled by Fear is going to be number 17. So Ghost of Conquer's Colonial Inn is from after working 6 long months working the overnight shift or the graveyard shift at Conquer's Colonial Inn. So I'm a firm believer when I write my books to immerse myself at a location. And so I work the night auditor shifts at the hotel, and I find having that access really kind of immerse me into the history and the mystery associated with Conquer's Colonial Inn. Some say Conquer's Colonial Inn is the most haunted inn in New England, and I have to agree that it's definitely haunted. But I will say that some of the information in my book, coming out August 21st through its History Press, A Haunted America, is some of it. It's about me untangling the myths and misconceptions associated with it. The legend is that during the American Revolution, during the battles of Concord and Lexington, that the inn or the property served as a makeshift hospital for Dr. Timothy Minot. And partially true, but the haunted rooms at Conquer's Colonial Inn, rooms 24 and 27, room 24 is said to have been an actual like a location where surgeries were performed during the American Revolution, and room 27 is said to have been a morgue during the American Revolution. However, that part of the inn was actually not built in 1775. So that sadly, like it's actually that part of it's not true. But is Conquer's Colonial Inn haunted? Absolutely, haunted enough to fill an entire book.
Have you had any experiences while you've been there?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the book is, yeah, I mean, I stayed at Conquer's Colonial Inn a lot during COVID. I felt like that was kind of like my home away from home. During COVID, it was like a nice getting out of the house, away from people, and it was still open during COVID. There was what looked like a shadow figure coming out of the bathroom of all places in room 24, and kind of crawling on the floor, crawling up to me. And this has been reported by other mediums and other paranormal investigators as well, where they said there was something kind of crawling out of the bathroom. And my thoughts were that it was a wounded soldier. And I talk about this a lot in my book, that I do feel like that, and this is room 24, that actually didn't exist in 1775. So I feel like it's possible that it's what we call a thought form that's there. So people have investigated that room so much, it's almost created a ghost.
That's an interesting theory, but certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those locations that, imagine how much energy is put into this room. And I think hotels specifically, and having worked, I currently work at a non-haunted hotel, just to see if all hotels are actually haunted. there's so much transient energy at hotels. There's people getting married, people announcing things, people committing suicide. There's all sorts of extreme emotion happening at hotels. And I find that even a hotel like Concord's Colonial Inn, where there has been hundreds of years of history surrounding it, where the beginnings of the country happened right down the street at Old North Bridge, compared to like a brand new hotel where I'm currently working, they're all haunted. I mean, I'm finding that pretty much all the hotels that I've experienced, even the brand new ones, have some sort of paranormal activity. And I feel like that hotels are just, it's almost like you leave a piece of yourself when you stay at a hotel. And all the hundreds of people that kind of go in and out and stay at the inns kind of leave a bit of their energy at the location. So yes, it makes complete sense that Concord's Colonial Inn is haunted because it has 250 years of 270 years now of history that has imprinted itself into the walls.
Wow, it's fascinating. It's one place I want to get to, like the Massachusetts and New England area. I've never been there, so just to hear, being here's sort of a history buff, and going back to the places that are the oldest in America, like you were saying, like 1775 and all that it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Ghost of the American Revolution, and I actually did a lot of work in Pennsylvania. I did some work in Philadelphia. I kind of traveled all over for that book, and in New York area. And I love history too. So my books, I always say my books are history books with ghost stories. So my goal really doing all this is to kind of lure people in with the ghost stories, but also just kind of use it as a vehicle to excite them about history. I'm surrounded by it. I live in right outside of Boston, and my big specialty. I was a tour guide in Salem, Massachusetts for about 10 years. So I specialize in the Salem witch trials, and that's something that people from all over the world they come out to Salem, Massachusetts to. Especially during October, it's really popular in October, but to learn about the witch trials hysteria of 1692.
Have you ever been to Gettysburg?
I have multiple times. In fact, I was at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. I've done investigations at the Farnsworth House, and so I feel like I specialize in Salem, Massachusetts. I feel like some people say that when they come to Salem that they feel really energized. I feel really energized when I go to Gettysburg. There's something about the energy at Gettysburg that sort of, it's just, you're surrounded by history and you can feel the history. It almost like you taste the history. One of my favorite inns in the country is actually the Farnsworth House. And I just love going there. I've done several, I did a show called Haunted Hotels Live Presents Dead Ends. And we did 2 episodes from the Farnsworth House. So I absolutely love Gettysburg. And I go there as much as I possibly can.
Any good stories? Get anything while you were there?
Yeah, I mean, my experience in Gettysburg was just the energy. It was great. I just love the energy. We did investigate the Farnsworth House, and I would say that I didn't have any profound experiences at the Farnsworth House, but I will say that other people that I was investigating with did. Like, we were picking up on names and elements that we didn't know actually existed in Gettysburg. So have I seen anything that, oh, you know what? I did have an experience. I was in the orphanage, and I was with my good friend Richard Estep, and we were down in the bowels of the orphanage investigating. And I wasn't really picking up on anything, but we went into this little area where it was where they supposedly kept kids during the orphanage, and it really had a negative energy. So we go into this little crawl space, and my face morphs. It's almost like the kid took me over, and my face kind of changed. So I looked like a kid's face. So people in the room were like, "Sam, your face literally kind of like," it's called layering. You were taken over, and I started whimpering like a child. Like the kid took me over. So I did have an experience, but it was not a soldier. I was expecting it to be something related to Gettysburg, but it was actually an orphanage where a child took me over.
Wow, that is very interesting. My sister got married there in Gettysburg at the in the town square. It was a bank and a banquet hall, and it was supposed to be haunted. It was interesting. And a couple people came in. One thing I remember was a friend of hers was out at the one high school, and it was like daytime, and they were taking pictures with their digital camera. And like the day of the wedding, they were showing pictures, and by a tree, you could see the outline of a soldier. And it's the craziest thing. I mean, it's on a digital camera on the card. You couldn't doctor it up, and it's not foggy, but you could see this haze, and in there you could see. I was like fascinated with that. I've never had an experience down there. We do. My wife and I go camping there when we can at the Gettysburg Battlefield campground, and then we'll take a ride in through the battlefield and stuff. You have to have an experience, but.
Yeah, kind of like Salem. I always when I go to Gettysburg, I feel like there's so many people there investigating that it's almost like what is actual original ghosts, like what is actual soldiers trying to communicate versus stuff that's been stirred up over the years, like sort of like baggage that's been dropped off from other people coming in from other locations. And I felt like, especially like when I remember going to the bridge and like Sachs Bridge, and there was like hundreds of people with their equipment out in the middle of nowhere. And we're talking like, how can you actually have an investigation with that many people surrounding you, asking questions to the soldiers? And they were all, trying to do this. And it was, to me, I mean, I love it. I love it. I love Gettysburg, but I also feel like, to me, it's about experiencing the history. And I don't know if it's necessarily a great place because there's so many people, because there's so much stuff that it's investigated so much. Maybe it's just better just to enjoy it, enjoy the history, honor the soldiers, and don't make them relive the tragedy of their deaths. And to me, like this goes for Salem too. If there's something that's horrific, the worst thing you possibly can do is sort of like how did you die? Which is what you get a lot in Gettysburg, and you get that a lot in New England. Yeah. And that's, I mean, do you want to like relive the tragedy that your death? You want to be remembered as who you were as a person. And I hope that that in Gettysburg, and I know that doesn't happen always, but it just would be great if people were a little bit more respectful, that these were soldiers that fought for their country.
Yeah, that's a very good point too.
You're absolutely right. I've been to Gettysburg many times. As you were going through that, I was smiling because I could relate to everything you said. Seeing tons of people at the bridge. I've been there where it's been literally packed full of people. And my friend of mine used to joke that we could start a selling burgers and hot dogs and have sodas and make some money actually. And we actually did research, and you don't need a permit to do that there. So back in the day, we could have made a lot of money doing that, actually, amazingly, how busy it was. But yeah, you couldn't investigate the bridge because it was so packed. And as for the town, the town's great. And the orphanage is a great place as well. It's sad what happened to people there, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember history, but the direction that I'm going, if you watch the shows like Curse of Lizzie Borden, my passion really is to not to say like, Lizzie, did you kill your father and stepmother, which is what the producers wanted me to ask. And the response that I got on my recorder was a blood-curdling scream. The spirits, she doesn't want to be called back to the murder house or like again and again, just like the soldiers. I mean, what I would really like to see is that we approach the spirits with respect, and not like, yeah, I did it myself. I would go out to the Sachs Bridge, and we all were investigating, and I felt very kind of dirty, almost like it almost felt like it was disrespectful to the spirits. I'm hoping that the paranormal community can look at this as not as a novelty, but these were people who we need to try to tell their story and tell their story correctly. And I think maybe go in with a bit more of a respectful approach, as opposed to finding a demon around every corner. And there's all like the YouTube videos, everything is like there's a demon in every location that they go to. And just like they were people too. And maybe even like if you watch Curse of Lizzie Borden, I almost served as a conduit for Eliza Borden, as almost like a therapy vessel, like almost like I was letting her get out all that emotion. And it was an extreme emotion that she's been holding on to for 200 years, and almost like a counseling session for the spirits, if that makes any sense, where we can maybe counsel them and use my abilities as a clairvoyant and as someone that can channel to hopefully get so they can actually deal with what was holding them back, their unfinished business, the guilt that they're holding onto, so they can cross over to the light. So that's kind of something that I've been working on a lot lately, where it's almost like a counselor, like a spirit counselor.
That's a nice approach.
That's different, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I see we have a question.
All right, 1 second here. All right, that's fresh. Thank you for tuning in. Does suggestion create belief? I guess the answer would be yes.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I do think that what you see, and you even see this at Conqueror's Colonial Inn, and a lot of what I talk about, if you say, I saw a soldier crawling on the floor at Conqueror's Colonial Inn, I do think that I believe in thought forms, so I do feel like that the energy sort of manifests to whatever it's going to get attention. And the whole premise of Fueled by Fear is the negative entities, especially, if we feed them negative energy, they're going to respond. They almost feed off of fear. So I do feel that your emotions, it does, whatever these energies are kind of feeding off those emotions. So if you're afraid, it's going to amplify your fear. If you are respectful, it's going to amplify your love and your respect toward them. So I think that it's important for us to to investigate, but to investigate with objectivity, but also with respect. And I think that whatever you go in with, if you're expecting to confront a demon, you're going to see a demon. Or if you're expecting to be attacked by a darker force, and you're going to be attacked by a darker force. So yeah, I do feel like that the suggestion. I try my best as a clairvoyant to go to a location where I don't know the history. I purposely did not know about the orphanage before I went there, just so I wouldn't be skewed by prior information before I went there. So I think it's important for us to go in as mediums and as clairvoyants without knowing the history, so we can accurately tap into the spirit realm when we're at a location.
All right. I think if you don't mind, you did talk about a little bit, I think, but not a whole lot. Can we talk a little more about Fueled by Fear, your newest book?
Sure. So Fueled by Fear is pretty much a follow-up to my book, Related to Evil. Related to Evil was about my journey learning that I was related to Lizzie Borden, not once, but twice. And this is through my mother, and then also related to the Putnam family and other people. And this is featured in the document Curse of Lizzie Borden. Fueled by Fear is the experience of filming Curse of Lizzie Borden changed my life to the point where I'm like, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. Being terrified, going in with that extreme fear. So my goal in 2022 was to really face my fears and to walk through my fears. And there was a lot of irrational fear. There was fear of the dark, fear of clouds, fear of just all sorts of things. That a fear of flying. I was terrified of flying. So I decided to go to the most haunted locations that I swore I would never go to. One was Hensdale House in New York. Another was the Conjuring House, and the other one was the Sally House in Kansas. And all three locations were definitely. I went in with the idea, like, I'm not going to be afraid. So I didn't want to feed the fear, if you will. And so it's about me kind of facing my fears, walking through the fears, having experiences along the way that may or may not be paranormal, but they were definitely my fears of these locations and the reputations associated with the locations before I went there. So Fueled by Fear is my book on facing my fears.
Oh, when is it coming out, by the way?
So I'm currently finishing it up right now. So we're hopefully my goal is June 15th. So the difference between that and Ghost that Conquers Colonial End. I'm self-publishing it, Fueled by Fear. It's going to be a limited edition, and it's going to be just available. I'm going to have a link online for people that want to purchase signed copies, but also at all the events that I'm going to in the next couple of months. I'm going to all sorts of events coming up all the way up until November.
We have some comments here. First of all, we have a question. That's fresh. They're from the UK, having quite a few experiences. Thank you for tuning in by the UK as well. How do we change our frequency to see the other dimension? Alter the resonance, do you think?
That's actually that's a great question. So I think that for me personally, so I went in, I have what we call a high vibration. So high vibration is, it's funny because the questions kind of covering my mouth, so I look like
I'm sorry. Here,
I just
back there.
I'm
sorry
just
about that.
Why am I like this? But yeah, so yeah, I do feel like that the frequency so I came up with a high vibration. It wasn't until I got an attachment that nearly killed me, and this is after working at the U.S. Salem for about a month and a half and kind of being beat down emotionally. So I was in a really low vibrational state. So my low vibration, and this is, I'm exhausted, overwhelmed by, just really overwhelmed at this point. That's when I was at my lowest is where I got the attachment that nearly killed me. So I do feel that if you're at a high vibration, you're going to attract higher vibrational energies. And if you're at a lower vibration, you're going to attract the lower vibrational stuff. So I do think that for me personally, it's a muscle that you have to work. And I actually teach a class called Spirit Squad, where we work on our abilities as sensitives, as empaths, and it's a muscle, and you got to work the muscle. And it's something that it's not something that you can just kind of do overnight. It's something that it spends years and years of working that muscle and developing your gifts that is there, but you have to kind of fine tune it as you go along. And also the messages that you get sometimes are kind of interpreting the messages. Like you may get something and you're like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. And then using experience from other people, other mediums to kind of help you understand what the spirits are trying to tell you. So yeah, it's just a muscle. It's almost like a radio station. You have to kind of tune into the right radio station, and you use various tools. I'm a big believer in what's called the Estes method, where you use noise cancellation earphones and a spirit box and a blindfold. And to me, this will help you. So this is, if you haven't used a spirit box and this, basically as a medium, it actually allows you to kind of go in sort of a trance-like state. And so people that use the Estes method effectively, in my opinion, are kind of tapping into the other side. So I would use tools to kind of allow you to go to that other realm to be able to have spirit communication.
That's awesome. That's something that I know. I've tried to do that with little success so far. Tried to take care of vision and hearing, and I got to try it harder or longer as well. We do have another question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just think some people, I think the biggest misconception with the Estes method is I think that people, they think that they have to say verbatim what they hear on the spirit box. And a lot of it, especially if you have any sensitivity, is kind of going into a trance. And also kind of, if you're picking up any keys or any other things, it's really a kind of a meditation tool to kind of go tap into the other side. So I would give it a more, Sean, I would keep trying and kind of view it as opening up your, I think that people get caught up in saying verbatim what they hear in the spirit box, and it's more than that. It's about kind of tapping into the other side and kind of really using the other emotions. Like if you feel like you're touched, or if you're seeing visions of someone running through the woods, say what you're seeing visually. It's a full sensory experience.
Okay, I will have to thank you. I will do that. We have a couple questions. First of all, David Lester, thank you for the question. Sam, do you use any kind of protections, religious items, or other? Your thoughts on using them?
Yeah, I'm very much a believer in protection. I think that was one of my biggest downfalls when it came to having the attachment. I went into I got an attachment. It was 2016, I believe, where I got the attachment in Salem, and I was beat down emotionally. I went into this event not protecting myself, and when you say protection, people are like, "What does that mean?" That's generally it's like a white light of protection. I do use I've used rosary beads a lot. I do have stones that I use. Let's see, I have a harmonizer. I use harmonizers. So at the time, I didn't protect myself, and I find that when I have been attacked by darker energies, it's when I went into the location feeling like I was safe, but I wasn't, and so I think that you have to always protect yourself. And what I've done or since having that attachment is I do what's called the crystal shield of protection, and it's basically Reiki, and it's something that my good friend Dana Mason, Dana Bodway, who is a high priestess witch, she kind of came up with this crystal shield that I do, and I'll tell you, it works. It's like a bubble of protection around you of Reiki energy. And I find that works really well for me. I use rosary beads a lot. I kind of have a combination of Catholicism and Wicca when I do my protections, and I find that actually witchcraft really does work, especially for when it comes to protection. Definitely.
Well, it's not all bad too. There's good and bad witchcraft as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's good and bad witchcraft. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and I work in Salem, and so I've given tours in Salem for many years, and a lot of people think that there's such a negative connotation to witchcraft, and it's really similar to Catholicism. Really, I mean, there's a lot of similarities to witchcraft and Catholicism. So I just use some of the things that work. Catholic prayer for me works wonders, and I have a Saint Michael, I have like a little bracelet with Saint Michael on it that I usually use as protection with protection stones. So yeah, I come highly protected, but it's still sometimes the darker energies, if you're going to a location, especially when you're not expecting to be under attack, is when the energies do take you over.
That makes sense when you wouldn't be thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right. And thank you. That's fresh again. Sam, do you dream?
I do. And a big part of my ability as a clairvoyant is definitely dream work. And getting back to my grandfather, when my grandfather, I had a download, it was through dreams that my grandfather gave me a download. And it turns out that my grandfather has been my spirit guide for most of my life since that initial download. I had a good friend who passed away 2 weeks ago. She was a psychic medium. Her name is Meg. And she gave me a download before she passed as well. So, and this happened in a dream state. So I was dreaming, but I was getting a download of information. It's kind of hard to explain what a download is, but it's almost like you're getting, she's passing on all of her knowledge to me before she passes. And that happened with my grandfather as well. So yeah, dreams are very, very much part of my story. A lot of times I'll work through, I do what's called lucid dreaming, where you're able to kind of like actually take control in your dreams and actually do stuff in a dreamlike state. I've done remote viewing in my dreams where I've gone to a location that I was really scared about, or I'm about to investigate. I'm actually, this weekend, I'm actually filming a location. I'm filming a documentary this weekend, and I don't know the location, but I'm able to visit before I go, kind of scoping it out before I actually go to see if there's anything that's of danger to me at this location. So yes, dreams are very much important.
All right. And that's fresh says thank you as well. All right. And Gwen has chimed in. Where do we find the classes you talked about a little bit ago?
All right. So Spirit Squad, if you go to my website, sambaltrusis.com. So Spirit Squad 2 actually starts this Sunday, and it's a 5-class journey. And I'll tell you, the group that we have assembled are amazing people from all over the country. A lot of the people I've met at these conventions that I go to, and I'll meet just like that one person who comes up to me at my table and they're like, hey, they just kind of connect with me. Sadly, Spirit Squad 2 is fully booked, but Spirit Squad 3, which is starting in July, we have openings available for that. So if you go to my website, sambaltrusis.com, we also have an event coming up called Spirit Squad Weekend, where it's going to be people from the classes gathering together at the Edgewood Manor in Providence, Rhode Island. And so if you can't make the classes because they're sold out, if there's no more spots left, you can go to Spirit Squad Weekend. We do still have some availability for Spirit Squad Weekend. It's going to be with me and psychic medium April Bousset. We're going to be working on building that muscle, working that muscle. But also we're going to do galleries and all sorts of things that weekend. A writing workshop for people that were part of my Ghost Writers class. So I'm finding that working with the community has been working with students that have the gift has been my calling. So I feel like I'm better as a teacher or as a mentor instructor as opposed to actually as a clairvoyant, because I feel like that I teach better than I do.
All right. And Gwen says she's glad you said what you said about Wicca. She practices Wicca.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it saved my life. It really did. And I think that my good friend Dana, she's like, you know what, Sam, you get attachments like every week, so she's like, we got to do something for you. So we were filming a show called Forbidden History, and Dana she and I are really good friends, and Dana is a high priestess, so she and I were out in the field, and I got taken over in Salem. Like something took me over, and she's like, that's not Sam. So she puts up her crystal shield, and the entity ends up biting her. So she's like, we gotta like work on this. And so she developed the crystal shield of protection. She actually got used Reiki, and it's kind of like this. She does a crystal shield, and I'll tell you, it works wonders for me, and it really does shield me. So I find that witchcraft definitely has been a good thing for me, and I love working with Dana and other people in the Wiccan community because I feel like that it works.
All right. And one more thing. Gwen says she needs to learn. Everyone says she has gifts she needs to develop, but has no idea how to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I highly recommend checking out Spirit Squad, Gwen. It's one of those things that if you have people in the community like you'll find that you'll be able to work the muscle in a way that you never knew you were able to. And I think it's also, and we kind of alluded to this before, when I had Chris Fleming, who I think is one of the better psychic mediums on television, with being with Dave Strader, it amplified my gifts. So you're as good as the people you surround yourself with. So if you're doing it alone, it's not going to actually work. But when you're with other people like a community like Spirit Squad, it's going to amplify your gifts, and it's going to give you a safe space to be able to explore what you're picking up on. So I think it's important to find a community of people that are similar. And if Spirit Squad is not the right direction for you, then another community where there are people that have similar gifts and are working on those gifts. And I think that they'll help you go on the path that you need to take.
Good to know.
Wow.
I do have a question. I know I'm alluding back. I have to ask, how was the Hinsdale house? How was your experience there?
Well, I'm writing about that now. So that was it was my year of fear. So I went to the 3 locations that terrified me the most. Hinsdale House was number 1 on my list. And I don't know why. It's weird because Hinsdale House was, as a medium, you'll get like psychic red flags. And I got a psychic red flag at the Hinsdale House. I think maybe it's the isolation. It's in the middle of nowhere in New York. So my good friend Richard Estep, who is an amazing writer, he does investigations for his books, and he was investigating the Hinsdale House in the dead of winter, in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, Sam, you want to join me? And I'm like, sure, I'll join you at the location that terrifies me the most. But I felt kind of like Dave Strader. I feel really safe with Richard Estep, and I felt like that I needed to do this for me. So I go out there, and I'll tell you, like my flight, I was flying out to Buffalo, and I got stuck. There was a winter storm happening. So I'm like, I felt like I was being held back from going to the Hinsdale House. So I was a day late to the investigation. I would go out there out in the middle of nowhere. I was told by that there were locals. There's a guy that was next door that would shoot people randomly. I'm like, okay. I'm like, that sounds safe to me. And so I did. So when I first walked up, I will tell you this. I saw what looked like a woman wearing colonial garb, or like a missionary woman walking by the pond. And she was guiding me out to the pond. So as soon as I walked on that property, my abilities just kicked in full force. And so the woman led me out to the pond. And this is before I even knew there were bodies buried by the pond. And then no one told me this. I told Richard, it's like, what are you picking up on, Sam? And I'm like, there are bodies out there, Richard. And he was like, that's he's British, so he was like, that's amazing, Sam. And so apparently their bodies buried by the pond, and now it's well known, but at the time it wasn't well known. And then that just began. It was several days that we were out there. I will say that the woods, and I know you're a Bigfoot person. I haven't really done much Bigfoot hunting, but I'll tell you, there's a cryptid out in the woods, out in the back of the Hinsdale house, and I saw it. And I was with other people who are diehard skeptics, and I swear that it looked like a humanoid figure with antlers. And and to me, like, that's elemental in nature. One would say maybe a Wendigo, but it's definitely just Native American backstory at that location. And I picked up on that full throttle. There was a lot of animal magic out there. So the animals were speaking to me, like they were guiding me on my journey through Hinsdale House. But I will say that for the most part, I survived. I think it lived up to its haunted reputation. I think that there's a lot of activity, and it's not necessarily just the house; it's the property behind the house that I feel is the most active. And it was to me, it was magical, and I want to go back. It's almost like it went from my greatest fear to one of my places that I love, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned.
How big is the house?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, because when we were at, so my wife, like she said, has some senses she needs to develop. She could, when she does investigations. But she did a little stint with Ghost Hunts USA, and she was at Crescent, and she met some folks, and then she did the investigation when at Penhurst when Ghost Hunts was there. Back again, just late last year for the first time. Now I heard they're defunct. They already folded, I should say. But get on my story. We were at Penhurst for the Paracon. She met up with some friends that she was at Crescent with, and the one woman actually does something with the Hinsdale House, and she's like, "You guys got to come up," and she offered an invite for us to come up and investigate that. So when you said that was like your number one, I messaged my wife going, the Hinsdale House, is that where your friend works? Because it sounds familiar. She's like, yeah. So I had to ask, because now I'm really intrigued and looking forward to getting up there to investigate.
I will say this: the Hinsdale House is advanced paranormal. So if someone's kind of new into the paranormal, I would be really cautious, because there's a lot of intense energy. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you look at the history, there was Clara Dandy. The Dandys lived there in the 70s, and there was a series of like things that happened to them that, to me, like echoed what happened in the Conjuring House, which is another one of my lists. So I do think that there's stuff out there, but I think it's elemental in nature. So if you go in with the idea that it's not the D word, it's actually elementals, then you'll be in a better location. And elementals can also, they can turn on you, but they're neither good nor bad. They're more protective energies. And if you're respectful to the elemental energies on that property, then you'll be fine.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
All right. And just a little bit ago,
yeah.
That's Fresh said, very interesting. And Gwen said, thank you so much. All right. How about your upcoming appearances? The rest of this year, some of your appearances.
Yeah, so I'm crazy booked. So I'm heading so I'm filming a documentary this weekend, and at a location to be determined. When they film me, they don't tell me where I'm. Like, they'll put me in a blindfold, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna ship you out somewhere." And they'll just kind of throw you in the middle of nowhere, and I got to figure out what's going on there in the spirit realm. But after that, I'm going to Paravation in Virginia. It's at the Heater House Historic, and that's in early June. I'm scheduled to do the biggest Paracon in the country. It's called Michigan Paracon, coming up in August. And that is something that I've been wanting to do for many, many years. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to go. I do a lecture with my good friend and demonologist, James Anito, called Monsters of the Paranormal. And the monsters are they could be cryptids, but they're also, I feel like that they're thought forms. A lot of what we're talking about here, stuff that's created through by giving them life. So the Monsters of the Paranormal lecture is going to be at Michigan Paracon. I produce my own Paracon. It's called Mass Paracon, and it's happening September 29th through October 1st at the John Carver Inn in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I'm heading to the Warrens Paracon in October, Vulture City Paracon in October. And I'm also, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, I'm doing Spirit Squad Weekend coming up July 7th through the 9th in Providence, Rhode Island. So you go to my website, sambaltrusis.com, you go to the events page, and it's all listed, pretty much booked every weekend. So, and heading all over the country. So hopefully we'll be able to meet up and hopefully you can get a signed copy of my book, Ghost of Conqueror's Colonial Inn, or Fueled by Fear.
All right.
Are you coming to Gettysburg by chance?
Yeah, so I'm scheduled to go to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, but I'll tell you, the job that I'm working the overnight shift, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that and work the job because and also to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. I've gone multiple years. It's a wonderful experience. It's just a bad time of the year for me for work as well. So I'm scheduled to go, and I'll keep everybody posted whether or not if I can go or not.
Okay, and again, sambaltrusis.com will be the website to find the answer and keep up with his appearances. All right, and we're about out of time. I want to thank our guest, author, historian Sam Baltrusis, for coming on with us. His books, including Related to Evil and Ghost of Conqueror, a Colonial Inn, and Fueled by Fear. Actually, I'm sorry, the first two, Related to Evil and Ghosts of Concord's Colonial Inn, are available on Amazon. Fueled by Fear will be available privately beginning June 15th. And actually, also the Ghosts of Concord is available on pre-order at a special price on Amazon. His website is sambaltrusis.com. He just talked about his upcoming appearances. Our next show will be June 15th. With Fox Paranormal, specialized in ITC communication. June 29th, we'll have medium Rebecca Foster from paranormalrealitytv.com. July 20th, Ernie Atwell of Paranormal Inc., and he's also the co-host of Step Into the Paranormal. July 27th, the very next week, the Ghost Finders from YouTube. They've been together for 12 seasons. They will be joining us. If you like the broadcast, consider helping us by liking and sharing. Thank you for tuning in and watching on Facebook or by giving a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, and sharing on YouTube. If you watch this far, well, don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of future broadcasts. Thank you. We appreciate all of you. Michael, do you have anything to add?
No, just it was a great show, and I know, Sam, we'd love to have you back. It was very interesting, and can't wait to hear about more stuff.
I'd hope to see you guys out at one of the Paracons coming up. That'd be great.
Yeah, Providence isn't too much of a drive. I'll have to say, I know we talked backstage before we came on with my wife's Got Knockers. It's a brand she's trying to get out there. So, I know we're not. I think it's July 20th. We're going to be at, and it's funny because
I love it.
We were out at this. It was. I don't know why it sticks out in my mind, but we were out in Morristown, Tennessee. So let me back up. The 20th, we're going to be out at the Smoky Mountain in Gatlinburg. We did that last year, and then the Morristown one was a Bigfoot music festival, and we got there Friday, and the only good thing is the amphitheater was down below us, so we heard music, but the people walking by would not even look at us. And I said to Gwen, I'm like, this is a Bigfoot thing, right? She's like, well, that's what it says. I'm like, I said, no one's even saying hi when you say hi, good morning, good afternoon. The next day, people came out, but there was this young guy. He had a backpack with 2 fishing poles, and he's just like straight lace, walking straight up. And he looks over, and he turns around like this, and he goes, "Are you talking about boobs?" And I'm like, "Well," I go, "Yes, but no. The Bigfoot with the knockers, with either the rocks or the sticks on the tree to communicate." I said, "But it is a play on words." So, but it was so funny because straight laces, you're talking about boobs.
Yeah. So it's funny. I as someone that, so elementals, there's also what are known as knockers, and they'll knock to let you know if you're in danger. And I interviewed Lori Cabot in Salem, who's a high priestess witch as well, the official witch of Salem, she has knockers. And so I've actually have gone to investigation, and I'm like, oh my God, do you have knockers? And all my friends are cracking up because when I'm saying knockers, I mean like knocking the little cryptids that knock on the wall, but apparently it's a double entendre.
Well, we got to get her a shirt that says "Got Knockers" and maybe have one switching up from a Bigfoot to like a little witch. Because we even wrote on onesies because like "Got Knockers," and I just said to her, I'm like, and everywhere we went this year, so we only went to like 3 or 4 locations, but people were looking for kid stuff. I said, we got to have a onesie, just either the 0, 3, 3 to 6, and 6 to 9. That's it. That says we have straight out of the woods. And people like that, because I always say, because people look, I'm like, hey, if you're not into knockers, we got straight out of the woods, and we have some Believe t-shirts, but we have these Got Knocker onesies. And I said, we're going to come up with one that says straight out of the womb with a little baby squatch on it. And everybody I've been telling them, like, oh my God, if you had that, I'd buy it. I'm like, there we go. That's our next item.
Sounds like a good item. It does.
Yeah. So I'll ramble on for hours, but I'll cut off. But that's funny.
Well, I also want to thank our obviously Sam. If you could hang on through the outro to the backstage for a moment. Do you have anything to add as well, Sam?
No, I was grateful to talking to you guys, and thank you all thanks for the mentioning the Telly Awards and like to me like that's been a huge honor, and it's been it's one of those things where you kind of go through the field and you go day to day and you don't feel validated. It gave me the validation that what I'm doing is the right journey and the right path, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to do that.
All right. And I also want to thank chat. Thank you guys again for a lot of the comments and some great questions as well. For our guest, Sam, thank you. And one last thing, again, we'll be returning June 15th with Fox Paranormal. Well, so long.
You're watching Paranormal Files Into the Darkness on CARC Universal. This has been a CARC Universal production.